Right, thousands of Congolese refugees are streaming into Burundi as clashes escalate between M23 rebels and the DRC's armed forces in South Kivu. The Rwanda-backed M23 claimed control of Uvira on Wednesday, triggering a massive flight across the border. Burundi has created new reception points, including the Kansega transit site in Bujumbura. But conditions are dire. No water, toilets or shelters. Many refugees say they escaped heavy shelling. UN Refugee Agency recorded 40,000 new arrivals between the 5th and 11th of December, now spread across the Kansega, Kishemeri and Gatumba sites. During a visit on the 11th of December, UN Refugee Agency representative Bridget Bukanga Engo called for urgent support, noting that some of those arriving are Burundians returning home. Now, to cope with this surge, UNHCR plans to open a new refugee camp in Bweru. As of media, Burundi was already hosting more than 71,000 Congolese refugees, including over 18,000 in Musenyi camp. Joining me from Abuja is Global Affairs Analyst Dr. Jide Uju. He joins me virtually. Good to have you join us, Dr. Uju.
Good afternoon, Precious.
So a new dimension to the DRC M23 rebel fight. We see now that it's taking a toll, not just on both countries, but generally, just on the region. I want you to speak on the impact that this war has started to have on the region.
Thank you. Unfortunately, it's very disheartening that this is coming on the heels of the December 4th peace agreement that was signed between Rwanda and Congo DR presidents in Washington. Just barely last week, because we are talking of December 4th, today is 12th of December, and there is already influx of refugees into Burundi as a result of the breakdown. This is quite unfortunate, and it shows that the two leaders, both the Rwandan president, who majorly is the one responsible for the M23 rebel forces, and that of his Congo DR counterparts, are not committed to peace. And it's very, very unfortunate because now we have this human refugee problem continuing to plague not just the two warring countries, but now even a third-party country like Burundi, who is not part of the conflict. And it shows failure of this peace accord, which everybody had lauded, and upon which FIFA even gave awards to President Donald Trump because of what he was able to facilitate in Gaza, the Gaza peace deal, and then Rwanda and Congo peace deal. But obviously, both in Gaza and even in Rwanda and in Congo DR, these peace deals are still
very shaky. But Dr. Joe, I just want to comment briefly. We'll get to the peace deal in just a moment and what it is seeming to have failed, or it is failing. But I wanted to stay on the point you made about Burundi not being part of this conflict, because Rwanda is accusing Burundi fighters of being part of this conflict. Of course, Burundi has denied. But beyond just the humanitarian crisis it is having on the region, we also see that a lot of countries in that region are sucked into this war and are being accused or accusing each other of having fighters. How do you, because that is one of the things that the peace agreement did not address, the involvement of other countries in this conflict. I'm wondering how that can be addressed to ensure that the focus is then on Burundi, so on DRC and the M23 rebels, and not on neighboring countries.
Step in and pick the peace deal and see what it can also do to midwife peace. After all, they have silencing the gun as part of their agenda for 2060, I guess, agenda 2030, agenda 2030, silencing the gun. So if they want to silence the gun by 2030, I think they should not just leave the US to it. African Union should be able to midwife a more comprehensive peace deal that not just look at the rebels, the M23 rebels, or the Rwanda and Congo DR, but also bring to the table the Burundi leadership, as well as other dramatic personnel that are fueling the crisis in that region.
Dr. Joe, does the African Union have what it takes to mediate this crisis? Because if you look at whether it's the DRC and Rwanda peace agreement, or the DRC and M23 peace agreement, as well as the Sudan, the rebel forces and the military agreement, when you look at the mediators, the African Union, I mean, quite embarrassing that the African Union is not part of the mediators at all. And the Union has not raised any protest as to why it has not been brought in as a mediator. It does seem like it really doesn't, I mean, the Union is not even interested in being part of this mediation process. So does it really have what it takes, to mediate most of these conflicts?
Well, unfortunately, the African Union is also bogged down by its own internal strife, internal challenges, and on top of which is the resources. It does not have the full complement of resources that it needs to do this kind of thing. And that's why, in spite of it, it still exists, and we cannot wish it away. For whatever is worth, I believe that they should also be talking to the rebel groups and talking to the leadership of those countries that are fueling this crisis. But beyond and above African Union, even if we are doubting their capacity to midwife this crisis, I think they can also raise this issue with the United Nations. After all, United Nations, all countries of the world are member nation of the UN, and the UN General Assembly, as well as different departments in the United Nations, also have played some role in midwifing peace deals across the globe. Because when you look at how this has taken toll on Africa and the governance system in many of these countries that are prone to conflict, it can be very overwhelming. Look at it. Nigeria has been part of many peacekeeping missions at our own cost, with very huge resources spent on these peacekeeping missions. At some point, I think there were about 60 or 80 peacekeeping missions going on simultaneously across the world. And the resources to keep this peace is very limited, most of when member nations are not paying their dues, which is also part of the problem that African Union has had to contend with over the decades. So we cannot just leave it to the
Dr.
United
Joe,
States.
I have, my apologies for butting in again. I have just a few minutes left that I wanted to talk about, because you talked about how the refugee crisis is at the heart of this issue. And it is not just in DRC or Burundi where we're now having a refugee crisis. Sudan crisis has created one of the largest refugee challenges in the world. And we have election-related refugee crisis. There is that, caused by conflict. There is that also caused by climate change. Africa is actually plagued by the issues around internally displaced persons. And I'm wondering how you think that the African Union should begin to respond beyond just looking at the UNHCR for support.
Again, whether you and I are in agreement to the fact that African Union cannot do so much when member nations are not even paying their dues, and the pledges, they are not honoring the pledges, financial commitments that they said they were going to make. And that is one of the biggest challenges that is plaguing African Union. But beyond that, it's also leadership crisis in many member nations. We have had a lot of, as we speak, Precious, 9 African countries are under military rule. And when you have leadership crisis, particularly when military takes over reign of affairs, their own primary responsibility is self-survival. They want to survive. They want to stabilize their country. And so their allegiance to the African Union is very limited. But then we must find we must find a truth. We must find the creative solutions to this problem, because obviously we cannot, like you rightly mentioned, it's painting Africa in a very bad light that we are the problem continent of the world.
All right.
Sudan, as you said, has created the biggest humanitarian crisis globally. And we are just discussing Congo DR versus Rwanda now. There is also the one in Somalia, which has not been resolved over many decades. So we have, as a continent, we have remained the crybaby of the world. But what do we do in a continent where there is high level of insecurity, as we face in Nigeria and several other Sahelian countries, as we also contend with bad governance in many African countries? These are existential issues that African leaders are contending with.
And we're hoping that at that level, Dr. Gideojo, my apologies again, we do have to leave it here because of time. But we're hoping that those are the issues, at that level that the union will begin to address. And we're hoping that also the peace deal takes a better turn. Thank you so much for your time, as always. A global affairs analyst, Dr. Gideojo.
Thank you very much, but I hope those humanitarian refugees will get attention in the coming days so that we don't leave them to their fate.
Absolutely. Thank you.